Today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to share a full replay of a keynote I did at FDLA, the Florida Dental Lab Association Southern States Symposium. If you've never been, this year's meeting will be June 9th through 10th, and it's just a great meeting. Lots of people, great energy, great education, and a great little vendor fair. As it will be a keynote in its entirety, we're going to go a little longer today, about an hour. I really hope you enjoy it and get some value out of it. So let's go to Florida. The title of my message, Reinvent Your Brand Strategy.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you. We're going to talk about reinventing your lab's brand strategy. And we're going to jump right into it. And I want to start with this. Your brand has nothing to do with your logo or your company name, unless it stands for a promise that is more valuable than the commodity that you make. A promise that is rooted in human connection, memories, and stories, all working together to account for why your doctor would be willing to pay a premium to not use another lab. And value creation is a strategic decision. And branding is about making a choice about who we're creating value for, how will they recognize that value, and what will they be willing to trade for that value. People change. People choose a new alternative because they believe that value is being created for them. And value creation is hard, but it's not hard because it's difficult. It's hard because it requires time, energy, discipline, empathy. It's hard to be more valuable than what you do. If it wasn't, there wouldn't be a race to the bottom. There wouldn't be a status quo, and there wouldn't be commodity. Value creation is hard because it requires deep emotional work, the type your competitor isn't willing to do. And emotional labor is keeping empathy at the center. It's identifying your attractive human attributes to package and deploy. Emotional labor requires moving from the insecurity of lowering your profits to enhance customer experience. Value creation needs emotion because its purpose is to inspire emotion. And the essence of branding begins and ends with this statement: emotional decisions make no room for alternatives. But what we often miss, because we're in such a hurry to grow, is to step by step and bit by bit define what our true value proposition is, and then organize ourselves around that value. Like a dark alley, the race to the bottom is just a territory. Please hear me. Your competitor will only exist where your emotional value does not. And my objective today is to offer you a reverse perspective about how you view your role in the lives of your customers. To understand that relevance, not preference, is what your customers really want. And the moment we shift our gaze to this thinking, everything that we see with regards to our brand strategy changes. And learning how to see and understanding the opportunities that lie in front of us are essential for growing a profitable dental laboratory. And it can be really expensive not just monetarily, but even more so emotionally if we don't see it. When I was 21 years old, my uncle gave me a gift, and it was a book. And the name of the book was called Prosperity Secrets of the Ages. And it had a lot of great insights on success, but the real gift was actually a note that was written on the inside cover. And that note changed my life. And here's what it said. Dear Sasha, our minds are like fertile soil, and our thoughts are the seeds that we plant. An oak tree or a weed either will grow just as easily. Be careful what you cultivate there. And what I had realized in that moment is that I had just acquired the most prolific asset we own as human beings. Vision. The ability to see who you want to be and be who you want to see. Branding is the power to choose what you want to be known for. To identify those human attributes that you're attracted to, reverse engineer them, and package and deploy them as your own brandable assets to the world. Make no mistake, it is only when we manifest the positive personality traits that we own do we become valuable enough to connect to someone else. And you and I are here because we need connection. Why? Because we're lonely. And we're lonely because we're separated. It's Friday, we're all here. We weren't here last week and we won't be here next week. Yet, we may maybe see each other 2 times a year, but some of our closest friends are in this room. And the fact that we're all amongst competitors has no bearing on this intrinsic need to connect. And this is the community that I was born in. I appreciated your speech, Chris, with your dad. I grew up in a dental lab. My dad started it in 73. I was born in 74. My mom answered the phones and we lived lab life. My friends went to the park. I wanted to go to the lab with dad. And everything I love about this community, I love because of him. Because he loved what he did. And as kids, he would always tell us that he was part of God's solution to the human smile, that God was using him. And I resonated with that. That was the truth that I was nurtured in. And I'll never forget the sign that he had walking into this beautiful lab. This was like 1982. It said, "Premier Dental Ceramics, where pride of craftsmanship is the rule." And by 14 years old, I collected 2 things: trade journals and baseball cards. And I would steal them and I would take them home, and my room was full of these big tabloid magazines. You've got the old Trends and Techniques right there, the old Journal of Dental Technology, Dental Laboratory Review, Dental Lab World. I have every LMT magazine from 1985 still. And I would go home and I would flip through them and I would just connect with the brands of the day. The J.M. Ney Company, Generic Gold, Belle de St. Clair. Who here remembers KV33, the inventor of the Vertex articulator? And I'd go to the trade shows and I'd see a buff Chris Borm, 16 years old. I've known him for that long, standing proudly behind his dad. Legacy is a powerful connector. And there are many in this room that knew that they were destined to live in this community. And that's a connection that we share. And our human nature, our very existence, is to seek, find, and align ourselves with people who believe what we believe. That our quest in life is to find the others whom we share a common set of values and beliefs. And when we find them, we commune. because our life happens where our communities live. And in the 1960s, a small little town in Pennsylvania called Roseto became a global curiosity. Medical researchers actually moved there to try to find out what was going on. And history would record it as the Roseto effect.
In the 1960s, a US town called Roseto was an anomaly in America. No one under 55 had died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease. The local death rate for men over 65 was half the national average. A team of researchers led by Dr. Stuart Wolfe considered whether this was because of their diet, location, family history or exercise habits, but on the surface nothing was different from the rest of America. In fact, the town was made up of Italian immigrants who worked in quarries and factories, smoked unfiltered cigars and had dinner tables laden with rich Italian food. Rosetans of the 1960s still held on to their old world ways. It was normal to find 3 generations under the same roof. 80% of men in the town were members of at least one community group. They would gather in each other's kitchens, play cards and simply talk. The conclusion? Rosetans were nourished by each other. Over the next decade, the multi-generational homes broke up, and by 1971, when opulent houses, expensive cars and swimming pools appeared, the first person under the age of 55 died of a heart attack. By the 1980s, the rate of fatal heart attacks in Roseto was the same as the rest of the country.
Communitas, the Latin noun for the transient personal experience of togetherness. That every living being needs an ecosystem to survive, not just externally, but internally. And that it's that exclusive place where we collect all that is valuable to us. I call it my life's camp. And it's everything that brings my life meaning is collected, protected, and kept close. For me, it's Jesus first, family, friends, places, food. It's where I choose to spend my time, my resources, and my loyalty. Our camp tells us about ourselves, and it tells other people about us. And for you as a dental lab, the very aim of branding is to inspire your doctors to invite you into their camp. And the history of commerce, in many ways, is a history of community, of connection. From the ancient trade routes, the Silk Road, connecting China and Europe, commerce happens when 2 people trade value. And the whole purpose of this transaction is to connect us. In the beginning, currency was connection. And if you think about it, value creation is the seedbed for every single human community and settlement on Earth. But we live in a commodity world. The conventional world sees the market like a pie, and our customers' value like a slice. And we are taught that business is about winning or losing, success or failure. And because of that, we strategize in absolutes. Our CRMs tell us who we've won or lost. Hitting the numbers, making budget, cutting cost. Our leaders tell us that business is war, and if we're not winning, we're losing. And we bring in consultants and sophisticated SaaS tools and drop our pants in price, all because we play the game of business to win. But in James Carse's intriguing little book, Finite and Infinite Games, he introduces a theory that there are only two games that we can play: finite games and infinite games. A finite game, is played for the purpose of winning. But an infinite game is played for the purpose of staying in the game. A finite game has an ending. Someone wins or someone loses. But an infinite game has no finish line and no winner. A finite game like football has fixed rules, but an infinite game like knowledge has no rules. And then in Simon Sinek's book, which he calls The Infinite Game, which is based on Carse's concept, he uses the Vietnam War as an illustration, which is really interesting. And a close examination of that war reveals a remarkable picture: that America actually won the vast majority of the battles that it fought. And over the course of that war, America lost 58,000 troops. North Vietnam lost over 3 million. And he goes on to say that as a percentage of population, that would have been the equivalent of America losing 27 million people in 1968. So all of this begs the question: how do you win almost every battle, dominate your enemy, and still lose the war? The Vietnamese were fighting to stay in the game, and America was fighting to win. Just look around you in your life, and the more we view our world through finite and infinite games, we see that we have infinite games all around us. For example, there is no such thing as winning in a friendship. You can grow the depth of a friendship over time, but you cannot win a friendship. Another example is marriage. You can grow in intimacy with your spouse, but you cannot be first in a marriage. And the same is true for every single human relationship we have, including the one we have with our customer. And so we have to ask ourselves, what game are we playing? And are we playing the game of business to win? If so, the finite player will always create value for himself first, then for the customer. But the infinite player will make very different strategic choices. Those that will keep them in the game by developing trust, permission, and loyalty. And when we play an infinite game with a finite mindset, we will win business, but it will be costly, both financially and emotionally, with market share at best only borrowed. Why do alternatives exist? Alternatives exist in commodity categories because we don't value them. And we don't value them because the price for value trade is fair. Commodities do exactly what they're supposed to do for the price that we pay. And when there is a tie, guess what? We choose the cheap one. We don't actively look for better price on water or soap or dye spacer. But when they find us, the cheaper good will always win, making the one that we leave forgotten. And price is the last refuge of a brand and a marketer who doesn't know what their customer really wants. And in dental lab circles, there's a lot of talk about loyalty these days. More specifically, the lack of it. And we do everything in our power to keep the doctor happy. We give him a good crown, good service, good aesthetics, good fit, good price. And then the wind blows. And the next thing you know, they're gone. Really? Just like that? Just for price? Fear sets in. And then hope leaves. Why? Because we have no answers. And there is no appreciation for the good work that we do. But the hard truth is that if we make something that others make, that can be easily found on the internet, there's a good chance that we've got pain. And it's the pain of knowing that if we raise our price high enough to compensate for the cost and the effort that we're putting into it, we fear that our customers will just go and find it cheaper somewhere else. But pain isn't a bad thing because it's an indicator. But it does tell us that something isn't right. And it just might be, we might be playing the wrong game. A fascinating customer retention statistic from McKinsey tells us that 75% of the customers that we lose would actually deem themselves satisfied with our product, our price, and our service. So then we have to ask the question, if they're so satisfied, why do they leave? They're with us because we're good enough. They're with us because they don't have a reason to leave. But here's the insight. They leave us because we don't give them a reason to stay. And that reason must be more valuable than what you do. To compete on price is one thing, but to cultivate a relationship that your doctor cannot afford to lose is something totally different. Our strategy cannot be to produce a good crown with good service, with good aesthetics, good fit, and good price. Our brand strategy must be to be missed. To be missed if we were gone. If your lab was gone today, what would your doctor miss about you tomorrow? And if connection is the branding asset of our future, then we have to get serious about intentionality, generosity, empathy, creativity. We have to get serious about playing the infinite game. To be missed if we were gone, we have to know what that's built on. And it's built on two strategic pillars. The first one is this: to be truly valued is to be rare. It's understanding that the things, and only the things that are valuable to us, are only valuable to us because they are scarce. And the second is this: execution is the ultimate differentiator. It's understanding that in order to be different, we cannot be the same. And to simply conform is to go unnoticed. Let's talk about scarcity. To value something is to guard it and keep it from leaving. And it's the only reason we invite somebody into our camp. And this is the fabric of loyalty. When it comes to being valuable, the principles of supply and demand apply. This is about you, me, and they. Think about all of those relationships that play an disproportionate level of influence in your life. The power of scarcity will move your laboratory to the front of the line. And by understanding this strategic principle, you now have an unfair advantage. Why? Because our competitors are living in the finite abundance of self. And where rarity drives the value of any asset, abundance does the exact opposite. The key to your reinvented brand strategy is to zero in on scarcity as the number one problem you were created to solve. Why? Because there is an ever-widening gap. The lack of meaningful value creation and your doctor's need for more and more of it. And what you, I, and your doctor inherently understand is that most people only think about themselves. Most businesses only care about themselves. And your dentist is surrounded by finite players trying to play an infinite game. And most of what our competitors have been taught about marketing is presumptuous, self-centered, and unemotional. It's an interruption strategy, yelling with the hopes of getting attention. And once they get it, all they do is talk about themselves. What makes you scarce? It's a focus on being relevant rather than preferred. It's giving your customer what they really want. Well, what do they want? They want what we all want. And all we want are the answers to these three questions. Do you see me? Are you for me? And can I trust you? Can I trust that behind closed doors, you would do what's right on my behalf? Why do we need answers to these questions? Because the world's greatest abundance is neglect. And branding is an experiential outreach. It's saying with actions, I see you, I'm for you, you can trust me. If we behave in ways that are expected of us, we will be blind to our customer, and they in turn will be blind to us. Traditional marketing tells us that we are in a battle for attention. The problem is our customers are always moving and their brains are crowded. And because we have so much coming at us, what do? We ignore it. But to cope, we group things by likeness. For example, your dentist will take the category of dental labs and define you by what you do. Labs make teeth. And when another lab comes along that makes teeth, and we don't have something more valuable to offer, you have officially entered the race to the bottom. Let's talk about brand positioning. True positioning is to help a busy human find an emotional anchor. And that anchor is a connection with the point of the arrow being experienced emotion. True quality, please hear me, true quality is not a function. It is a feeling. If branding is about connection, then empathy, not features and benefits, is at the heart of positioning. And when we understand this, our target market actually changes from being obsessed with the customers we don't yet have to honoring the customers that have already trusted us. Empathy is going where your customer is rather than allowing your customer to come to you. And for the customer, we become the very solution for the same neglect that we ourselves experience. And what we learned from Lewis Hyde in his book, The Gift, and even more so as we look internally at our own lives, is that when we intentionally create value for someone, we are giving them a gift. Ever since the beginning of time, gifts have been used to bring people together, to create a rare connection point. And there is a supreme difference between a gift and a commodity exchange. The gift is a mechanism that is used to generate a feeling, an emotional bond between two people. But a commodity exchange is a walk-away trade, leaving no necessary emotion or need for connection. And the ability to create value that is recognized is essential for your brand. Please hear me, discounts are not a gift. Promotions are not a gift. These are conventional manipulations that are more of the same strategy. There are rules to value recognition in which 5 boxes must be checked. It must be recognized as intentional. It must be recognized as beneficial. It must be recognized as having cost you something. The customer must recognize that you didn't have to do it. And then when we check these boxes, we meet our customer at the intersection of clarity and surprise. And this is where the seed of your brand drops into fertile soil. Clarity, because they now know something about you they didn't know before. And surprise, because they didn't expect it. The attention that someone gives us is not a right, but a privilege. It represents a choice. When someone gives you their most precious asset, which is time, consider it a prepayment on their part without knowing what they'll get back. Pillar moment here. It is the return on attention that makes you more valuable than what you do. And when this happens, we are then granted the greatest asset that we can possibly own as a brand. And that's the brand asset of permission. What is permission to a brand? It is the opposite of interruption marketing. Permission is the privilege of delivering anticipated, personal, and relevant messages to the people who actually want to receive them. Think of it as a continuing investment because of your return on their attention. Which means that when you earn permission, your message is never ignored, only anticipated. Permission is like dating. You don't start by asking for the sale at the first impression. It's tactical. You earn the right over time, bit by bit, over and over again. You can't take 10 tons of truth over a 2-ton bridge. You will lose the bridge and the truth. Permission would be like asking your customers, if you want to hear from me, please raise your hand. Those who will become loyalists will opt into who you are, not what you do. And those that raise their hand are giving us something very precious. The simple understanding of permission is this: would they miss you if you were gone? The second strategic pillar, execution, is the ultimate differentiator. It doesn't matter what we learn or what we want. If we do nothing, nothing will change. To differentiate yourself, there are tools that we need. But these tools might be the very thing that you fear the most. How do we stand out then? How do we get heard? How do we differentiate ourselves in a marketplace that is screaming the same value propositions, the same better price promise? It's no secret that our industry is trending towards commoditization. And many of you may fear the race to the bottom, and understandably so. But I'm here to say, fear not and be discouraged, because there has never been a greater opportunity to differentiate yourself in the market. Because if you study market dynamics, you'll understand that the commoditization of any industry will share a common thread: a diminished perception of value. Over time, the marketing, communication, and experience become so entrenched in the status quo that the market invariably finds itself in a trap, in a sea of oneness. And there's a prolonged lack of emotional value that exposes price as the ultimate differentiator. A subtle blindness has set in. Highly predictable ways of doing business that are so static and familiar, they're no longer noticed. And these are called market conventions. And to your lab, they serve as the catalyst for emotional brand disruption. Conventions are essentially habits driven by stale human business practices, also known as the status quo. These are accepted rules of engagement in which the ways people behave are customary to act and to think. Ring, ring, ring. Thank you for calling ABC Dental Lab. How can I help you? That is a market convention. The good news for us is that differentiation needs a catalyst. And those market conventions serve as the departure points for a valuable brand disruption. To differentiate yourself, we need to overturn those conventions, because the status quo behavior reveals where the market is stuck. And opportunities are everywhere. But we have to see, and as Apple famously said, think different. Disruption methodology is a way of thinking and seeing backwards. Its name implies rupture, nonlinearity, nonconformity. Disruption seeks to identify conventions and overturn them with intentional creativity. And at Harvest, we call this framework refreshing by design. And it's a discipline, an operating system, a framework, a roadmap that serves as an incubator for value-based behavior that can be recognized. RXD is our radically open brand practice and our value creation methodology. And we apply it to everything we do, whether it's product design, behavior at the touch point level, marketing communication, or our internal culture. It's a catalyst for the imagination, and it focuses on new perspectives, serving as the opposite of more of the same thinking. And the disruption model consists of a three-step process. First, we identify the market convention. We need to find the market behavior that will become the catalyst and the white space for the brand to grow. The vision. This is the shaping force, right? It's identifying the human attribute that we want to deploy. It could be generosity. It could be gratitude. The disruption is the rebellious execution that will overturn the convention with a value that the customer does not expect. And when hunting for conventions, we focus in three mining fields. Service conventions. These are all the human touch points that are fully automatic. It's everywhere where your dentist or your lab touch each other. Marketing conventions. This includes finding the common threads about what your competitors say about themselves. And even more so, what dentists perceive. How a dentist perceives a laboratory to market itself is a convention. And then we have product conventions, right? For dental labs, this could be your packaging. How do you package your crown to your dentist? Cardboard box, crown box, bubble wrap? Is it like everybody else? Service conventions consists of all of those touch points where you interact. Remember, when we talk about conventions, we're talking about how people think, right? Conventions are impediments to clear thinking. And so we have to ask the questions. What are the preconceived notions that your doctor has when it comes to dental technicians and dental laboratories? If there is a remake in question, what could they possibly be thinking before they pick up the phone and call you? That could be a disruption moment waiting to happen. Product conventions represent a preconceived notion that the product will do exactly what it's supposed to do. What about scenting your box with a lemon scent with a note that says, "Have a refreshing day"? Right? Again, it's thinking outside the lines to overturn conventional expectation. What could a dentist expect from a dental lab marketing piece or ad? The word smile in our industry is a convention. It doesn't mean anything because it's too obvious. And it can actually extract value from your ad. In our world, features and benefits are a convention. Features and benefits are about me, my product. Instead of telling you how great Harvest PMMA is, what we'll do is seek to flip the narrative through our disruption methodology. To not make it about me, but about us, about what we do and why we do it. Discovering convention starts with breaking out of our own thinking patterns. We ourselves are in bondage to conventional thinking, so we have to be the first to break out. We have to know the box full well so that we can think outside of it. Unlearning is a discipline, and it questions everything that up until now has proved effective. It's asking radical questions, silly questions, pushing boundaries. Why is orange juice a morning drink? Right? Why do we talk about brunch but never dinner? These are the types of questions that disruption seeks to mine out, to find those angles of disruption and differentiation. And I land this airplane bringing it back to the vision. Your vision is who you want to be and what you want to be known for. If you want to be generous, visualize your execution. Find the convention. Create that surprise and delight moment. Do not be deceived in thinking that if your vision is not big, it's too small. There is no such thing. A vision cannot be big, it can only be clear. A vision cannot be sized, it can only be seized. And if there's one thing that you remember from this keynote, let it be this. You were created by God to never have a competitor. Your thumbprint is God's promise to you that you are exclusive, that there is no one like you in all of creation, past, present, or future. Your attributes, the traits of your personality, you were created to give them away as gifts. Your brand will be that exclusive goodness that can only come from you. And I close with a quote from Maya Angelou in a short 2-minute video. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. As long as there are humans, there will always be loyalty. Because we need connection to live. For without it, we die. It won't be your good price, and it won't be your service, or your good aesthetics, or your good fit. It will be the answer to this question: if your lab was gone today, what would your doctor miss about you tomorrow? Because emotional decisions make no room for alternatives.